On my 18th birthday, my neighbor kissed me. It was supposed to be just another birthday. Cake, family, the usual awkward smiles and polite hugs. But that night, everything changed with a single knock at the door, and a kiss I never saw coming. He was my neighbor, older, confident, the guy I'd watched from a distance for years, always wondering if he saw me as anything more than the kid next door. But when I turned 18, he didn't just see me. He crossed a line neither of us could ignore. What started as an innocent visit turned into a night that would reshape everything I thought I knew about myself and him. Before we begin, make sure to subscribe to the channel, like this video, and turn on notifications. You won't want to miss what happens next in this story of discovery, desire, and everything in between. I turned 18 on a rainy Thursday. There wasn't a big party, no wild celebration. Just my mom, my younger sister, and a store-bought cake with the words, "You're finally legal," written in uneven blue frosting. My mom snapped a few photos, kissed my forehead, and went to bed early. I pretended I didn't care, but honestly, part of me had hoped someone else might remember the date. Someone who lived right next door. His name was Ethan. 23, tall, tanned, with messy brown hair and that quiet confidence that made him look like he belonged in a movie instead of the small street we both lived on. He wasn't just my neighbor. He was the guy I'd secretly been watching through half-closed blinds since I was 16. He used to mow the lawn shirtless in the summer. I'd sit at my window and pretend to read. He'd wave sometimes. I never knew if he was waving at me or just being polite. We weren't exactly friends. He was older. He had his own life. But once in a while, we'd run into each other at the mailbox or when I took out the trash, and he'd flash me that half smile that made my stomach feel like it was folding in on itself. Still, I never thought he saw me as more than the shy kid next door. Until that night. It was past midnight when I heard the knock. At first, I thought I imagined it. I was in my room, lying on my bed, scrolling through birthday texts from people I barely talked to anymore. The soft knock came again. 3 times. Careful. Close. I hesitated, then pulled on a hoodie and padded down the stairs barefoot. When I opened the front door, my breath caught. Ethan stood there, rain dripping from his jacket, his hair damp, cheeks flushed like he'd run. "Hey," he said, voice low. "Sorry to show up so late." I blinked. It's okay." He held up a small box wrapped in brown paper. "I know it's not much, but I didn't want the day to pass without saying something." I stared at him. "You remembered?" He smiled. "Of course I did. 18's a big deal." I took the box with shaking hands. "Thanks." He hesitated. "Can I come in for a minute?" I stepped aside, still too stunned to process what was happening. Ethan walked in, dripping a little on the mat, looking both out of place and somehow perfectly at home. We sat on the living room couch. The only light came from the kitchen, casting soft shadows around us. I opened the box. Inside was a small leather bracelet with a single silver bead in the center. It was simple, subtle. Somehow it looked exactly like something I'd wear. "I wasn't sure what to get you," he said, watching my reaction. "I just wanted it to mean something." "It does," I whispered. "I love it." We sat in silence for a moment. I could feel the tension in the air, not the awkward kind, but the kind that felt like something waiting to happen. My fingers fidgeted with the bracelet. His eyes were on me, and suddenly, it felt like my whole body was awake, alert. "I've been thinking," Ethan said softly, "about how fast you're growing up." I looked up. And I probably shouldn't say this, he continued, but tonight, I didn't want to pretend I don't see you anymore. My heart stopped. What do you mean? I asked, barely breathing. He leaned in, slowly, like he was giving me time to pull away. I didn't. His lips met mine, soft, careful, but intentional. And in that one kiss, I felt everything change, like the world had shifted slightly, tilted in a way I wasn't ready for but never wanted to undo. He pulled back first. I was still frozen. I'm sorry, he said gently. I couldn't not do it. I tried to speak, but the words wouldn't come. He stood up, walked to the door, and turned back. Happy birthday, he said. And then he was gone, leaving behind wet footprints, a leather bracelet, and the kiss that would haunt every thought I had from that moment on. I didn't sleep. Not really. I lay in bed for hours, staring at the ceiling, fingers brushing the bracelet around my wrist like it could somehow explain what had just happened. He kissed me. Ethan, my neighbor, the guy I'd secretly imagined, dreamed about, watched from behind curtains for years. He kissed me on my birthday, and then left like nothing happened, like he hadn't completely shattered and rebuilt my world in a single breath. The sun came up, but it felt like it didn't matter. Nothing felt real anymore. Not the light, not the air, not even the sound of my mom downstairs making coffee. I stayed in my room most of the morning, replaying every detail. The way his voice had trembled just slightly when he said he didn't want to pretend anymore. The way his lips felt. Warm, soft, sure. And then the way he walked away without looking back. Was it a mistake? Was it something he regretted the second it happened? By the time I stepped outside around noon, I was wired and hollow at the same time. I stood at the edge of our lawn, staring at his house like it might offer some kind of answer. That's when I saw him. Ethan was in his driveway, wiping down his truck. Shirtless. Again. Just like old times. Only this time I couldn't pretend I was just the kid next door. He looked up, caught me staring, and smiled, but it wasn't the same half-smile he used to give. It was smaller, sharper, like he knew something he wasn't sure I could handle. I didn't know what to do, so I turned back toward my porch. Hey, he called out. I stopped. You got a minute? I turned slowly, pretending to be casual. Sure. He set down the towel and walked over, squinting slightly against the sun. We stood about 5 feet apart, not touching, not moving. I wasn't sure if you'd come out today, he said. I wasn't sure either. A pause. I've been thinking about last night, he added, eyes on mine. I don't regret it, but I probably should have handled it better. I nodded, but my throat felt tight. You kissed me. Then you left. I know. Why? He exhaled. Because I panicked. You? The guy who fixes engines with his eyes closed? Ethan smiled, but it faded fast. You turned 18 yesterday, and I've been trying not to notice you for a long time. But last night... He hesitated. I just couldn't ignore it anymore. I swallowed hard. So, what now? His eyes searched mine. That's what I don't know. The wind picked up. A leaf danced across the sidewalk between us. I'm not a kid, I said, louder than I expected. You can't just kiss me and then vanish. I didn't vanish, he replied. I stepped away because I didn't want to screw this up. This? I asked. What is this, Ethan? He took a step closer. I don't know yet, but I'd like to find out. The silence between us thickened. My heart pounded. I could feel it in my wrists, my ears, my throat. "But only if you want that too," he said quietly. I didn't answer, because I wasn't sure. Not yet. All I knew was that I'd spent years dreaming about him, and now that he was here, real and vulnerable, I didn't know how to handle it. Before I could say anything, his phone buzzed in his back pocket. He checked it. His expression shifted. "I have to go," he said, already backing away. "Work emergency. But can we talk later? Really talk?" I nodded, barely, and just like that, he was gone again. But this time, it didn't feel like the end. It felt like the space between two answers. That night, I couldn't stop thinking about how close he stood. 5 feet apart in the driveway felt like 5 inches in my memory. His eyes had held mine for longer than they ever had. He didn't touch me, but my skin remembered the kiss anyway. The space between us pulsed like something alive. I kept telling myself not to read too much into it. He said he wanted to talk, but people say a lot of things they don't follow through on, especially when they're afraid. So when the next day passed and he didn't knock, didn't text, didn't wave at me from his side of the yard, I started to spiral. By the 3rd day, I gave up pretending I wasn't waiting. I was sitting on my back porch with a hoodie pulled over my head, headphones in but no music playing, when I heard the gate creak. I looked up. It was Ethan. He held up 2 mugs of something steaming. "Hot chocolate?" I hesitated, then pulled out my earbuds. He smiled carefully. "Didn't know if you'd want to see me." "I did," I said, more honestly than I intended. He handed me a mug and sat beside me on the porch steps, close enough that our knees brushed for just a second before he shifted. "I'm sorry," he said quietly, "for the silence." "I figured you changed your mind." He shook his head. "Not even for a second." I took a sip. The chocolate was rich and warm with a hint of cinnamon. "I thought a lot about what you said," he continued. "That you're not a kid. You're right. But I needed to make sure I wasn't acting out of impulse." "You mean kissing me?" "Yeah," he said, glancing at me. "And wanting to do it again." My heart did something strange, like it leapt and curled in on itself at the same time. "I haven't stopped thinking about it," I admitted. Ethan leaned back against the railing, eyes on the sky. "I've been alone a long time," he said. "It's easier to keep things simple, to stay in your lane. But with you, I can't pretend anymore." I turned to face him fully. "So what do you want?" He looked at me, really looked. "You." It landed between us like thunder. But before I could react, the back door swung open behind us. My mom stepped out, eyes narrowing when she saw us on the steps. "Oh," she said. "Didn't realize we had company." Ethan stood quickly. "Hi, Mrs. Miller." She gave him a tight smile. "Nice to see you again, Ethan." I stood too, holding my mug like a shield. She turned to me. "I need help with the groceries." "I'll be right in." She looked between us once more, then disappeared back inside. Ethan sighed. "Guess that's my cue." "Probably," I said, heart pounding. He stepped forward, just slightly. "We can't do this in pieces. I want to be clear with you." I swallowed hard. "Then be." "I like you," he said. "Not as the neighbor, not as the kid I used to wave at. I like you now, and if this is something you want too, I'll wait, for as long as it takes." I didn't have the words, but I didn't need them. Instead, I did something else. I reached out hesitantly and brushed my fingers against his. Just a touch, barely there, but it said what I couldn't. He smiled, soft and real, then nodded and turned to leave, slipping back through the gate as the sun disappeared completely. I stood there a second longer, fingers still tingling, and when I stepped back into the house, my mom was waiting at the kitchen counter. "He's older," she said, not looking at me. "I know." "People will talk." "I know that too." She finally met my eyes. "Just be careful." I nodded, throat tight. But inside I was on fire. Because Ethan saw me. And now I had to figure out if I was brave enough to let him keep looking.
My mom barely spoke to me the next day. Not in a cruel way, just in that kind of quiet, passive silence where every movement says more than words. She made breakfast, left the dishes in the sink, and disappeared into her room before I could even sit at the table. I didn't blame her. She'd seen me with Ethan. She wasn't stupid. And now, the air in the house had a weight to it. I checked my phone a dozen times, but Ethan hadn't messaged. I told myself not to panic. He said he'd wait. But silence from both him and my mom made everything inside me feel unsettled, like the ground under my feet wasn't stable anymore. That afternoon, I walked to the edge of the neighborhood just to get away from the house. There was an old bench near the elementary school, faded and slightly tilted, but it was one of the only places where no one knew me. I sat there, legs stretched out, trying to breathe through the confusion. That's when my phone buzzed. "Ethan, can we talk?" Before I could reply, a second message popped up. "Ethan, I'm outside." I looked up, and there he was, standing across the street like he didn't want to scare me off, hands buried in the pockets of his hoodie. He looked uncertain, like he wasn't sure if showing up like this was a good idea. I stood slowly. "You followed me?" He shrugged. "I saw you leave. I didn't know if I should, but I needed to." I crossed my arms. "You didn't text me all day." He stepped closer. "I figured your mom wasn't thrilled." She barely looked at me. "I get it," he said softly. "It's a lot to process." I stared at him. "Do you regret it?" "No." His voice didn't shake this time. "But I'm starting to realize that liking someone isn't always enough." That hit harder than I expected. "What does that mean?" I asked. He ran a hand through his hair. "It means I'm not sure how to do this. I've never been in this situation. You're new to all of it. I'm older. Your mom's right to worry." "So you want to stop?" "No," he said quickly. "God, no. I need to know you're okay with everything this might come with." I stared at him. "What if I don't know yet?" "Then that's okay," he said. "But I won't push. You don't owe me anything." The bench behind me suddenly felt inviting again. I sat down. Ethan followed. We didn't speak for a long time. The wind picked up, cool and steady. Finally, I asked, "Have you always been into guys?" He hesitated. "Not always. I mean, I knew, but I ignored it for a long time. It was easier. And now? Now I'm tired of pretending," he said. "Especially when you're right there." My heart clenched. "I think I like you," I said, "but I'm scared of what that means." He turned to face me fully. "Then let's be scared together." I almost smiled, but before I could respond, we heard the screech of tires. A car had pulled into the school parking lot too fast, music blasting. Two guys jumped out, maybe college-aged, maybe drunk, and one of them spotted us on the bench. He laughed. "Cute! Two little lovebirds," he shouted. Ethan tensed. The other guy smirked. "Isn't that your neighbor, man? You robbing the cradle now?" My body locked up, every muscle. Ethan stood slowly. "Ignore them." But I couldn't. My ears burned. My stomach flipped. I stood too, my chest tight. One of the guys mimed a kiss and laughed louder. Come on, Ethan said, touching my arm. Let's go. We walked away quickly, their laughter following us like smoke. By the time we reached the sidewalk, my hands were trembling. I'm sorry, Ethan said. You didn't need that. I didn't respond. I couldn't. Something had cracked open inside me, and I wasn't sure how to put it back. When I finally spoke, my voice was low. I don't want to be a secret, but I don't know if I can survive being visible either. Ethan didn't say anything for a second. Then he looked at me and said, Then we take it one day at a time. Together. I nodded barely, but inside, I knew something had changed. I wasn't just navigating how I felt about him anymore. Now I had to face the world outside us, too. We didn't talk about the parking lot incident again, not out loud, but it lingered, a quiet ghost between us. Still, Ethan kept showing up. Whether it was passing me in the driveway, messaging late at night, or walking beside me in silence, he was there. And slowly, I let him be. It happened one night at the movies. We sat in the back row, not as neighbors, but as something closer, something real. My hands were sweating. His knee brushed mine. The theater was dark, and for once, I didn't feel watched. Halfway through the film, his pinky nudged against mine. I didn't move away. Instead, I turned my hand over, and he laced his fingers through mine. Soft, solid, safe. I held my breath. He looked at me, didn't speak, but his thumb moved gently over my knuckles, like a secret message I didn't need translated. And for the first time, I didn't care who saw. Chapter 6. The Answer I Needed. Weeks passed. Life kept happening. People whispered, stared sometimes, but none of it stuck the way it used to. My mom still didn't ask questions, but I caught her watching us once through the window. Ethan helping me carry in groceries, laughing, touching my shoulder. She didn't say a word, but the next day, she left a container of hot cocoa mix on the counter, the same kind he'd brought me that night on the porch. One Saturday morning, I found a note in my mailbox. It was in Ethan's handwriting. Come over. I want to show you something. I knocked on his door a few minutes later. He pulled me in gently and led me to the living room. On the wall, framed, was a photo of us from a few days ago. Someone must have taken it without us noticing. We were walking down the sidewalk, shoulder to shoulder, heads tilted toward each other like gravity itself was pulling us together. I've never framed a picture of myself with anyone, he said. Until now. I stared at it, stunned. Why? Because this is the first time it's felt like something I never want to forget. I turned to him. He stepped closer. I'm not going anywhere. Not unless you ask me to. I touched the photo, then looked at him. I'm not asking. He smiled. And I kissed him again, not like the first time, but like I finally knew what I wanted. If this story moved you, tell us in the comments. Have you ever loved someone who made you braver? Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video with someone who needs to know that love, real love, starts when you stop hiding.